Hey everybody, welcome to the Single Tracks Podcast. My name is Jeff, and today my guest is Ben Plenge. Ben is a professional mountain bike coach and founder of The Strength Factory. He's trained pro riders and also hundreds of amateurs over the years, both in person and online. Thanks for joining us, Ben.
Hey Jeff, thanks for having me. From my side of the pond.
Yeah. Well, tell us a little bit about your background. How did you get into strength and fitness coaching?
So the strength and fitness and personal training and all of that really started like going back to the army. So I spent my 20s in the army. I spent 8 years, so I'm a veteran, I guess is how you guys would put it over there.
Yeah. Got
out in 2010, having had like a really good time, exciting time. It was, Iraq and Afghanistan, all that sort of thing was going on. Mm-hmm. But obviously, in the army, there's lots of opportunities for fitness and things like that. And it's something I'd always been interested in. And although I wasn't like a PTI, like a physical training instructor, I really got into the gym and like helping learning how to prepare myself for tough courses and things like that. And that's really where it came from. When it came time to, I was coming up to my 30th birthday and I was ready for something different. The army's quite good these days at helping you to prepare for civilian life. Mm-hmm. And so they paid for my personal training course.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that was the first step then. So that love of fitness just grew through my 20s. And then I thought, right, I'm going to go for that. I'm going to do this. And then ended up doing, kind of the normal personal trainery kind of role. Like lived in London, worked at a big commercial gym. And it's like, oh yeah, I want to lose weight for my wedding, or I'm going on holiday, I want to look better in my pants. And, all that sort of standard personal training, if you like, which there's nothing wrong with. But after a few years of that, I was a bit over it. And I was really just getting back into mountain biking then, because I'd been a big rider back in the 90s, Jeff, like from 95 all the way through until after university when I joined the army. Just ragging around on hardtails and stuff like that, because that's all there was really. I never had a full suspension bike really. And then when I left the army, I just picked it up again. I had a bit of money saved up, and rather than doing something sensible, I went and bought myself a bike basically straight away. And I was like, oh my goodness, these have changed a lot in 8 years. And that was it. I was just hooked again, sort of back on it. And then put that together with my love of fitness, my personal training. I thought, you know what, I think I can put this together and maybe make a living out of this. Maybe this could work.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I was in the military myself, and
no way.
One of the things that I really loved about it was like part of your job was physical fitness and like staying in shape and like working out. And, we would have like our unit would have like required workouts where we'd, all work out together. But then also, we would get like time off to be like, hey, Colonel, I need to go ride my mountain bike this afternoon, physical fitness. And they'd be like, sure, go ahead. And
nice.
I'm sure that's not everybody's experience. I was in the Air Force and they were a little more accommodating, but that's a cool connection. And so nice. You mentioned your love of mountain biking. Like, was that, why focus on mountain bikers specifically? Was that just because you enjoy that? Or, I mean, it seems like a kind of a niche thing within fitness.
I just love mountain biking. It's that simple. Like, I'm fair, kind of like you.
It's not a business decion. It's a passion thing.
Fairly obsessed with mountain biking on many levels, basically, much to my wife's frustration. But I just thought, I can make something of this. I think partly as well with the internet as it is, and access to so many things. I saw, over there in the States, I think Bike James was a bit of a forerunner with his website and his programs. I was like, oh, okay. Oh, this is a thing. This is possible. Yeah. And then I learned a bit about Alan Milway over here, who obviously, coached to the stars, like with an unrivaled record for athletes who've won World Cups and World Champs and all sorts. And I was like, oh, okay, this is definitely a thing. And then in Dirt magazine, there'd be a column from Darren Roberts, who ended up being something of a mentor to me. And he was the coach for years for the Athertons before they ended up with Millway. And now he works for Red Bull looking after athletes and stuff like that. And so I just, partly it's that passion, that wanting to do something different, have my own thing that's really centered around what I want to do rather than being told what to do, which is the military way, as you appreciate.
Right.
And then I think those people and those things helped me to realize that it was possible and it was feasible. But then, it took a few years to actually be able to make a living from it properly. When I first moved down here to Bristol from London to start this business, because London I didn't think was going to work for it, and Bristol has got this massive outdoorsy mountain bike community. That's why I moved here. And so I just thought, this is a place, this is how we go, and started with one client. And for the first year to 18 months I just build up, then I had 2, then I had 3 clients. And to pay the bills, I was actually abseiling for a living. So, so industrial abseiling. Over here, we call it rope access. I don't know what you call it over there. So abseiling tall buildings and bridges to do maintenance and surveys and just, dangling off of stuff for probably not quite a good enough day rate that it should have been, really. But I enjoyed it. It was an interesting time in my life, sort of making that transition. But then eventually I was like, oh, you know what? I've got enough clients. I sell a few programs online. We're getting somewhere. Let's go all in. Let's hang up the ropes.
Yeah. Well, so I saw on your website that one of your most popular workout programs is based around body weight strength exercises, which I imagine you did a lot of that in the military. So the question I have is there like a limit to the effectiveness of these body weight exercises? I mean, obviously it's a simple thing. You can do it anywhere, but are you missing out if you're only doing body weight exercises?
So I think for most people, you can achieve pretty much everything you need, mostly with your body weight. Because, if we think about, you could be a pretty strong person, and then you can go on the internet and Google body weight or calisthenics or something, and you'll see people doing insane feats of strength with their body weight, with one arm or one leg, that are way beyond what you're able to do. And so you immediately realize, oh, there's a whole lot further I can take this, to really gain that level, that mastery and that level of strength that they have. But then if you go so far down that rabbit hole with the level of commitment that you would need to do those things, like, I don't know, one arm pull-ups and crazy variations of pistol squats or whatever it is, it really takes a lot of time that most people don't have, especially if you're trying to balance out with another hobby like mountain biking. Yeah. And I think the other place where bodyweight training, like I said, it's so versatile. You can make so much progress. You can get really strong. The place where it does lack a little bit is just the ability to sort of strengthen the lower back area, where, if you can imagine your hinged position on the mountain bike, that lower back area, even if you've got strong hips and strong upper back, which you can easily build with your body weight, that area is hard to work. And ideally we do want that strong. And that's where, weight training does trump the body weight training, if you like. But yeah, most people, in fact, everyone pretty much, can make a whole load of progress just using their body weight. There's so many options, variations on single leg and pushing and pulling. Like, you do need a little bit of kit as well, even though it's just body weight, because you need something to pull against, Jeff. Otherwise, you can't be doing, it's like young guys in the military or young guys all over the place who are just doing press ups because you can see your chest in the mirror and they don't do any pulling, they don't do any back work. I've been there, I think. But, you need something to pull against, whether that's a pull up bar or, like a TRX set of straps or rubber band, resistance bands or something like that. So you do need something to pull on to get a balanced workout. But yeah, like you say, you can do it anywhere, anytime, and it's really accessible to people. Because I know that a lot of outdoorsy types and mountain bikers maybe not so keen on the gym environment.
Yeah, that's a good point. Right. have a really bad feeling when I think about going into the gym. That's like not something I want to do when I can, be outside. And
Oh, really?
yeah.
Is that from a bad experience or just?
No. Well, it's just the environment. Yeah. I like being outdoors, and I just associate it with, just like sweaty, confined, bad air. And maybe it is bad gyms that I've been to.
Yeah, I do. I must admit, over the years, I've encountered this quite a lot with outdoorsy people, and what I inevitably end up saying is that number one is like, maybe try it, or try a different gym or a different environment, especially these days.
Mm-hmm.
Like the gym I work at is quite typical these days, a bit like the more CrossFit, like a warehouse kind of box. They're lots bigger. A lot more space, a lot more air, rather than that like low sort of suspended ceiling kind of, old sort of skanky kind of gym that maybe we're thinking of.
Right.
And they can feel a bit alien at first, but on the whole, they are friendly and welcoming places, and it's easy to dismiss like the big guy doing weights in front of the mirror as just a meathead. But he might just be really insecure. Maybe he got bullied when he was a kid for being weedy or something, And actually, if you asked him or asked her, whoever it is, for a bit of help or something, they almost certainly help you and give you some honest guidance and stuff like that. That's certainly my experience. And so I wouldn't write it off. And certainly one of the things I aim to do with the people I coach at the gym, who are all mountain bikers, and a lot of them have never been in a gym before. They come and see me, and maybe they're a bit nervous. I tend to coach in small groups, so I'll have like 2 or 3 riders, Jeff, and you just create a little bit of community, friendly environment, familiar faces, and they soon get into it and they realise, oh, the gym's not so bad after all. This is all right. I can do this.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, as you mentioned, all of us are really pressed for time. So, it's no surprise that when we do have free time, we just want to ride. We want to get outdoors. We want to go for a mountain bike ride. What are some ways that we can improve our riding fitness that don't necessarily take away from our fun rides? Like, are there things for people who, just feel like they don't have time to work out outside of like going for a mountain bike ride?
Yeah, so the first thing I always say, and this is kind of my answer when people say, just ride your bike, when they're talking about maybe what I do for a living and what I provide, is that, you probably can't go mountain biking in your lunch break. Like, you might be able to,
right.
if it's dry and, maybe you're working from home, you can stretch your lunch break a little bit, or you got but you might be able to, depending on where you live. But for most people, you can't do that. But you probably could spend 40 minutes or 45 or 50 minutes doing some bodyweight training, or going to the gym, or even sitting on the spin bike in the gym, if you don't want to do weights, or, but doing some strength work would be an ideal way to spend that time, or go to a yoga class, or do some mobility work. If you're working at home, you could just go in the living room and do some mobility training just on the floor, and then have your lunch and then get back to desk, get back to your calls, whatever it is.
Yeah.
So I think that's the first thing, is that you can fit strength training in, and little doses of riding or fitness or conditioning, like indoor bike or road bike, whatever, to boost your fitness, increase your strength at times that mountain biking is just not an option. For instance, I was coaching at the gym this evening. Obviously, we've got the time difference. I coach from 6 until 7. And if you wanted to ride for that hour, 6 till 7, you would have needed lights for the end of that ride, which is cool. Lights are expensive. Some people have them, some people don't. But, riding it in the dark is like a whole other game. And maybe you don't want to do that on your own. So you need to go with someone. Whereas you can go to the gym on your own. You could do the yoga class or sit on the spin bike on your own. But most people are a little reserved about night riding on their own, in case you fall off and, get eaten by wolves or whatever you have over there.
Yeah. And also, like, 1 hour to me, like, that's not enough time for a ride. I mean, I feel like I'm barely getting started an hour in. And so, if I have an hour, mountain biking is not really an option. I mean, even if I lived right beside a trail and could go out, like I still wouldn't get excited about going for a 1 hour ride. You know, I'm usually looking at 2 to 3 hours. So yeah, that's a good point. If you have 1 hour, you do some fitness stuff that you can do in that short amount of time.
I think you're also just showing us that you're a spoiled mountain bike journalist who only gets to do 3 hour rides.
Yeah, but right. I don't do them as much as I want.
You're going to alienate the listeners.
That's right. Yeah. Well, yeah, it's interesting too that you talk about, you know, riders being time pressed, and it made me think a lot about the marketing that you see behind e-bikes. That's kind of the idea, is that, oh, these are for people who don't have time. But for a lot of us, we're not interested in e-bikes. We'd rather kind of maximize the rides that we do go on. And it seems like fitness training is a good way to do that.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, for me, what strength and fitness gives you in terms of mountain biking, for the normal person, for the trail rider who's not a hardcore racer or anything, is it just gives you that bit more freedom, Jeff. It gives you the freedom to go a bit further, to climb a bit higher, to accumulate a bit more, you know, vertical feet or meters or whatever out on your ride. It gives you that bit more freedom to work on your skills to ride the next level of trail up, that's a bit more technical, a bit more demanding, a bit more physical. It lets you ride well for the final descent of the day, as well as the first couple of descents, rather than just hanging on like an absolute passenger and crashing and hurting yourself, you know? When you make a mistake, which we all do plenty of times, it helps to stop you crumpling onto your stem of your bike. I actually made a little Instagram video about that this evening, actually. But yeah, you know, if you're not strong enough and you make a big mistake, well, yeah, your ribs and your stem, they meet, and they never should really, ideally. And yeah, if you know, you do want to improve as a rider, so you could just be more competent and more confident and more skilled, then I think strength just gives you more potential to be able to do that, like whilst working with a skills coach or just working on your skills independently. Being stronger just enables that to happen like quicker and more smoothly, I feel anyway, because you've just got that physical confidence. You can hold your body position, and you can see it all the time. Like, I know over there it's not quite the same, but over here in the UK, trail centres are a real big thing, where they're like marked out. Effectively, they're cross-country loops, you know, graded blue or red or whatever, and they attract a real diverse range of riders and abilities. And you can really see the people who are obviously great riders and the people who've still got a bit of work to do. And you can just see their posture on the bike, the way they hold themselves. You're like, you need to just be a bit stronger to hold yourself properly there, because they're sliding off the back of the bike, and, you know, then there's no weight on the front wheel. And then they're like, oh, I need to let some air out of my fork because it's not working. I'm like, oh, your fork's fine. But, you know, and it's this slippery slope that I'm sure we've all seen. And again, I want to be clear, I'm not judging these people, Jeff. Like, you know, we've all had to work on our riding to improve over the years. And, you know, certainly I've been there as well. But, you know, if that is you, if you feel that is how you ride, then, you know, you need to get some skills coaching, get some help. And as part of that, I really believe that strength enables that process to happen more smoothly, and it gives you so much potential. And then I guess the other thing I'd say as well, Jeff, is, and it's probably more important, because look, mountain biking is important. Yeah, it's a pretty big deal to us. But the bigger picture, especially if we think about most of the people who follow me and read my stuff, and I imagine you have a similar demographic, it's kind of like middle-aged dads mostly. There are some women, but the people who watch my stuff, they're generally sort of 35 to 55. And they're generally the people, apart from my sort of pro elite racers, who come and see me at the gym. And for them, strength is a game changer in terms of quality of life, longevity, avoiding the pitfalls of chronic disease, age-related muscle loss and decline. And it sounds like I'm layering it on really thick here, but you cannot underestimate, and I cannot undersell, the value of having some muscle, not like Arnold Schwarzenegger, but just having some muscle and level of strength in terms of making you a better, more resilient human that can age well, that can mountain bike like a badass, and that can, just, do things right. Does that make sense, or does that sound a bit much? I mean,
absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and I think back to like when I first started in the sport and, you would go to these mountain bike races and, realize pretty quickly that there are a lot of people that are a lot faster than you. And I remember always thinking like, oh, these people must just ride all the time. Like, I don't have time to ride like that. They must be spending hours a day on the bike. But then you come to find out that a lot of folks, it's like maybe they commute to work on their bike, or they, find a way to do these like strength training workouts, 30-minute workouts every other day, or they're doing yoga, or, it's all these other things that kind of add up off the bike. And it's not necessarily just about like getting more hours in on the bike.
Yeah, 100%, Jeff. I mean, something that I've been saying for a few years now that I really believe is that, better humans make better riders. And so, a better human, and again, it sounds judgy, like if you're not a better human, you're a bad human, but I don't mean it like that.
We can all be better humans though, yeah.
Yeah, we can all be better. We can all move a bit better, have a little better mobility. I could spend less time on my phone, like with my head sort of dipped down there. I could improve my posture, I could improve my breathing, all these things, my balance, and all of that makes me a better human and lets me function better in day-to-day life. And when I can do that, I can then become a better mountain biker as well. And just going back to one of the points you made earlier about people grabbing these bits of time and commuting and stuff is a little top tip, I guess, for there's probably quite a few people listening who don't have to travel to work as much as they used to. Certainly here in the UK, since COVID, there's a lot of people working from home a couple of days a week, or maybe even 4 or 5 days a week, where they used to commute. And what I say to them is it's really easy to just get stuck where you don't leave the house all day. You get to the end of the day, and if you've got like one of these watches, it will tell you you've done 800 steps all day. Actually, if you are working from home, you still need to commute, even if it's round the block. Like, you need to get dressed, and that time you used to commute, that is now time for exercise, for fitness. Yeah, it's not time to spend longer in bed and, sitting around eating Cheerios, watching telly or whatever.
Right, more TV time.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, yeah, I can scroll my phone a bit longer before I have to log into my first Zoom call. No, like that's an absolute recipe for disaster.
Right.
Like, if you want to, have a good quality of life and be fit, healthy and able and mobile, then use that time because it's been given to you, You can now go for a walk. Like, that's the bar is low. Do something, just move, get some steps. Or, maybe one day a week we go for a ride, on a road bike, gravel bike, spin bike, whatever. Or you can get to the gym, or it doesn't matter. You just got to do something a few days a week and start to build a really positive habit that is going to, small things done regularly are really powerful.
Yeah.
You might think that walk means nothing, but, you bang out a few thousand steps, you burn a couple hundred calories. And that's really going to make a difference if you do that a few days a week and then consistently over 2, 4, 6 months.
Yeah.
That makes a big difference to whether working at home contributes to you becoming obese. Or it can go the other way. Working from home can also give you the freedom to dramatically improve your strength, fitness, and well-being. It just depends on your actions.
Yeah, for sure. That's great advice. So what is different about how pro athletes train versus amateurs like me? Is it the same, or are there key differences between how you would train a pro versus an amateur? Yeah,
I think the same but different is what I would say. First things first is they've got time and energy on their side. If they're a full-time pro, then all they need to do is train or ride, eat, recover, eat, sleep, recover, train, ride, eat, sleep, recover. And yes, they might have a family, they have to email sponsors, do some social, there's other bits, I'm oversimplifying. But actually, in terms of their physical energy, that's where it goes. And it's, which means that they can tolerate and do a large volume of training. They could be training 5, 6, sometimes, to some degree, 7 days a week. They need to rest and recover, but, they can punch out a lot. Whereas for the likes of myself as a 43-year-old father of two with my own business and all the stuff that goes with that, that's quite a big ask, to be able to put in that many hours a week. Like, I just physically can't do it, and I wouldn't recover. I'd probably just get ill, and I wouldn't have the time. And so that's the first thing to appreciate, is that you can't do that amount. And because they're doing a large volume and hopefully recovering from it, it means that they achieve higher levels of fitness, which enables them to then do things to a higher level of intensity as well. So, when they're doing an interval session, the watts they're putting out are going to be significantly higher because they're a pro athlete, it's their job, but they're going to be doing, potentially more reps and more sets of it as well. So, a workout that you or I probably wouldn't be able to finish, for instance.
Yeah.
But what it all ultimately boils down to is that whether you're a pro or, a 50-year-old guy who works in a factory, is that it's all about just applying the principles. And then you apply the principles, like the broader principles of training, about how to get someone stronger and how to get someone fitter. You apply it to the pro, you apply it to, to the guy in the factory who rides on the weekends. And then it's just the actual application of those principles that's a bit different, You're still trying to achieve similar things. They're just starting from different places and they're trying to get to different places. So it's the same but different. Does that make sense, or was that a bit?
Yeah. So do we all sort of adapt to training in the same way, or some people naturally going to be able to? Is it going to be easier for them just in terms of where they're at?
Yeah. So this is where genetics is either your friend or foe. So it's like anything. Imagine a bell curve where most people adapt at a fair, you do some sort of stimulus, whether it's an interval session or a strength session, and most people get a similar response to training, which is arbitrary. You can't quite measure it like that. And then there'll be people who respond very well to training and they'll get even more from it at that far right end of the curve. And then at the left end of the curve, you get the few people who got a bit screwed over genetically for whatever reason, and they just don't adapt quite as much. They need to work harder for every bit of gains. And at this point, there'll be probably a disproportionately high number of people listening, putting their hands up saying, oh, that's me, I must be at that end. I'm like,
that's me, right? That's the problem.
yeah. Go, oh yeah, it's definitely me. It's like, people like to blame something a lot of the time when you need to actually really take responsibility for your actions and, your path that you choose effectively. Not to say that that's easy. And the other thing to consider is that some people are naturally a bit more fast twitch, i.e. their muscle fibers have got a different makeup, which makes them more likely to be good at power-based sports. So they'd be your BMX or four cross racers or, track sprinters. If you want to be good at those things, if you want to have a really good gait in four cross or BMX, yes, you need to train really hard, but you also need to be a bit more fast twitch genetically, because you could take someone else at the other end of the spectrum who would be slow twitch muscle fiber. They're naturally going to be predisposed to adapting really well and getting really good at endurance activities. So maybe, marathon, mountain bike racing, or just really big days in the hills. And, they can just pedal along all day and it looks easy. Their heart rate's low. They're the people you hate on a long ride. You're like, how do you make it look so easy? Because maybe they're naturally slow twitch. And you can apply all the power-based training you like to them. They're never going to get anywhere near the fast twitch guys in terms of, the max watts they can do sprinting on a watt bike or a BMX or out of a gate. And similarly, that fast twitch sprinter, I mean, let's put it in terms that everyone's aware of. Usain Bolt, obviously the most fast twitch person ever, the fastest human to ever live.
Yeah.
Do you think if we spent 2 years training him to be a marathon runner, he, I don't know, maybe he could do a 3-hour marathon one day. Who knows?
Yeah, I'm sure he could still beat me. That's for sure.
Yeah, but you just don't know, do you? But he's obviously, and then you go the other way. You take Elliot Kipchoge, who was he the guy who did the 2 hour?
Yeah, the 2 hour. Yeah.
Yeah. And we try and make him as powerful as possible. He's still, not even going to probably qualify at a local athletics meet, compared to fast twitch athletes who are born that way. So, but again, it's the bell curve. Most people are somewhere in the middle where you've got a bit of both muscle fibers. If you do more power training, then you'll get more powerful. And if you do more endurance based and aerobic training, then that is the way your physiology will adapt, So most people are in the middle and have not been sort of gifted in either way or screwed over in either way.
Yeah, that's good to know. Well, we're going to take a break, but when we come back, we're going to talk about how climbing strength is related to descending and also how strength training works in your 40s. Stay tuned. And we're back. So, Ben, another program you offer is geared toward riders who are over 40 years old. So what's different about strength training in your 40s versus, say, your 20s?
So I think that in your 20s, you can, and I did, get away with a lot of stuff where you can kind of use a bit of brute force and ignorance and still get stronger. If you pick up a little niggle or injury, then I'll just train around it. I'll just ignore it. And a week later, it's kind of gone. Whereas I really started to appreciate myself and in my clients that when you're in maybe mid to late 30s and then onwards, those things start to change. And when you get that little tweaky knee or lower back, you need to do something about it, or it's still going to be annoying you and spoiling rides a month later.
Right.
You need to really think about how you train and, why you do the things you do so that you use your valuable time and energy effectively to make progress, to make yourself feel better rather than just beating yourself up. And I think that's something that I always come back to is partly possibly due to macho gym culture and also social media, #beast mode, is there's an idea within training, within fitness, and I'd include, cycling as well in that, broader cycling, that if it's not really hard, if you're not a sweaty wreck on the floor by the end, then it wasn't worth doing. And you're not going to get any fitter and you deserve to be slow and weak, And I think there's a bit of that. And I think the tide is starting to turn on that. But the reality is that, and certainly my approach to the middle-aged men and women that I coach at the gym, is that on the whole, I want them to walk out of the gym feeling better than them when they walked in. And they still worked. They still might have sore legs tomorrow, or sore arms, or chest, or back, whatever it is. But on the whole, they walk out feeling better than when they walked in because they've moved and we've done constructive exercises, not necessarily the absolute heaviest work that we could do, with a heavy barbell or whatever, not necessarily the toughest beasting that hits max heart rate and hasn't been sick in a bucket, It's just that consistently working at maybe a 70 or 80%, being kind to your body, being gradual and playing that long game that so few people play earlier in life because you kind of don't need to because you can get away with it. I wasn't playing the long game in my 20s. I just wanted to get as big as possible, as quick as possible,
Right.
Yeah. So I think that's the main one, really, just trying to play that long game, think risk versus reward.
Yeah.
Listening to your body. Oh, you know what? I've been sat down all day today on endless Zoom calls. My back's really stiff. And when you're 23, you might still go and pull a really heavy deadlift that day. But when you're 43, I would suggest that that's probably not optimal. That's probably not going to have the best result. It might do if you spend a long time warming up and you're a really competent lifter. And then once you've warmed up, you feel good and you build up through the weights gradually. And on the day, you might pull a really great heavy deadlift, happy days, and you're stronger. And that's awesome. But for a lot of people, a lot of the time, especially with a lower skill threshold in the gym, I'll suggest that would be a bad idea And you'd be better off doing something on a single leg, like a rear foot elevated split squat, to really strengthen the hips and the legs. It's a lot lower risk.
Yeah, it's interesting. I feel like a lot of mountain bikers, like middle-aged mountain bikers, for a lot of them, this is like a new sport, right? Like they maybe when they were growing up, like they ran or they, played like a team sport, and now they're in their middle age and they're looking for something else like physical to do. And mountain biking is a great choice, as you and I can attest to. But how would you set the expectations for someone like that, right? Like who, maybe they took a decade or more off from like, really participating in a sport, and now they're doing mountain biking, which is hard. Like, what does it take more time when we're older to like build that strength and that fitness than maybe it would have when we were in our 20s?
I think you should definitely allow more time. And I always tell people who are thinking about starting one of my programs or coming to see me, it's like, yeah, you know what, you are going to feel some positive differences in a few weeks to a month or 6 weeks maybe. But what I want you to think about is not how fit I'm going to be or how strong I'm going to be in 2 months. Is literally think about this time next year. That needs to be the outlook. If you want to create something that's sustainable, that you can really start to make that long-term progress to build like month on month, rather than just trying to smash it out and conquer it. And suddenly, you can't just get strong in 2 months, And then there's other things to consider with that as well, that, your muscles get stronger quicker than your tendons and ligaments, for instance. So if you suddenly ramp up your training 0 to hero, and maybe you're naturally a bit of a stronger person, maybe you did some physical stuff when you were younger or whatever, and then you start ramping it up, I'm getting strong again, but meanwhile your tendons and ligaments can't keep up, and then you strain something. And then when you get that injury, when you strain something, now you can't train for 3, 4, 6 weeks, whatever. And now we've got the opposite of consistent. We've got short-term intensity followed by a break, and then this cycle. And I'm all about taking a more gradual approach, which, look, Jeff, it doesn't sound sexy. It's not like the best sales pitch, It's like, come and see me at the gym and you'll thank me in a year,
maybe a year later you'll feel better.
Because you will feel the difference in the shorter term. Like you'll be, you know what? It was easier lifting my bike onto the roof of my car to go to the trails. The bike felt a bit lighter. Maybe, I can manual my e-bike now. I couldn't do that before.
Yeah. Or maybe you're not getting as injured as often. I mean, it seems like strength training definitely helps you avoid that.
I feel more confident on the black trail at the bike park because I can take the hits. I feel strong, or I kept up with some friends. I'm normally at the back of the group ride every weekend, but now actually I was sort of in the middle of the group ride for the first half of the ride or whatever. And so as well as that long-term kind of view, the other thing I say to people is that for all the best things in life, you kind of have to sacrifice a little bit in the short term to benefit in the long term. And so when you first start doing some strength training, it may be, and this will sound counterintuitive, but it may be that your riding suffers a little bit at the start. Because even though I'm going to start gradually with you, your legs are going to be tired. They're probably going to be sore. And you might, for the first few weeks, you might go for your weekend ride cursing me, saying, I hate Ben, my legs are sore. And it ruined a ride. And this is where people go wrong. And you get this a lot in road cycling as well. They're like, strength training's stupid because, you get sore legs and then you can't pedal your bike. I'm like, well, yeah, if you have a short-term outlook and only think of it in terms of the first few weeks of a program, then it doesn't work. It's stupid. But if you consistently train, you adapt, you get stronger, and then you realize, I'm not sore for 4 days now, I'm sore for 2 days, and then I'm sore for 1 day. And then actually, most of the time, I can feel it the next day, but I wouldn't call it sore. and I can still ride as hard as I want, you know. And that's the long-term outlook, where I've gone through that short-term discomfort, that short-term reduction in my ability to ride hard or ride how I want to. So it's short-term sacrifice for long-term gain. It's like anything. It's like saving money. It's like, you know, all the good things in life come from making hard decisions today to make your life better tomorrow.
Yeah.
You know, the easy decisions today, the easy route today usually makes your life harder down the line, which again is I sound like a Jocko quote or something here, but you know, I'm a big believer in that.
Yeah. There's no silver bullet. I think our listeners were hoping you were going to give us like a shortcut to it, but yeah, that's not the case.
No, you won't really find on my YouTube, you won't, or Instagram, you won't really find 10 mountain bike fitness hacks from Ben, you know, and stuff like that. It's not really my style. And maybe I should jazz it up a bit and I'd have a few more followers. But I think there's so much nonsense out there in fitness and stuff, like especially the broader fitness world, like we've all seen it. 8-minute abs and all this. It's just nonsense, you know. Yeah. Take this pill, magic shakes, weight loss shakes. It's like, it's all nonsense. It's all total nonsense.
Yeah.
Yeah, which, again, I know not everyone wants to hear, but again, you maybe don't want to hear that, but the reality is that it also doesn't have to be all-encompassing. This doesn't have to take over your whole life.
Right.
It's just a few small habits, a few small changes that you can make to fit, like the commute I talked about earlier, like getting to the gym in your lunch break, like doing some body weight training at home in your garden or your garage, or getting together with a friend and going down the park and doing pull-ups, or you and your riding buddies doing a little warm-up before the ride, you know, so that you can get more out of the first lap and the first descent because you're warm, rather than that first one being really slow because you're stiff as a board. Yeah. They're just little things done regularly, and then you get into it, you make some progress, you buy into the process, and that's where the real change happens. That's where people, you know, get so much from this in terms of their quality of life and mountain biking, which is obviously the most important thing.
Yeah, that's great advice, and something that I think we need to hear and remind ourselves of all the time. So one of the things that you kind of hinted at earlier that I want to ask you about is becoming a better climber going to make you a better descender. And you kind of touched on this when you were talking about like that last descent of the day when you're feeling tired. But like, what's the connection between like being a really strong and confident climber on the bike with being good at descending as well?
So I guess the first thing that comes to mind with that is that to be a good climber, you need to have a good level of aerobic fitness. And that aerobic fitness is the absolute foundation, the base of your fitness, whether it's running, cycling, ski touring, whatever it is, that is the base. And so if you're a good climber, then you need to be aerobically fit. And when you are aerobically fit, one of the things it enables you to do is to recover well between hard efforts. So it's going to help you to recover between descents. So that's why you see downhill racers, World Cup racers, they'll still do like aerobic base miles because that aerobic fitness helps them to recover between practice and qualifying and race runs, so they can then perform at their best on each one. So that's the first thing I would say, is it's just going to enable you to do that. And if you are really fit and efficient, then it just means you've got more energy, you've got more gas in the tank at the top of the hill for the fun bit on the way back down, you know, rather than being, if you struggle on the climbs, you get to the top, you've been at high heart rate all the way, you're really hot and sweaty and dehydrated, then your descending is going to be no good either.
Yeah, that's where I struggle. I do that to myself all the time, right? Like I'm usually the first one to the top of a climb on a group ride. Yeah. And then my descending is horrible. And I always just say like, oh, I'm not a good descender. But I think, the more I ride, the more I realize, well, it's because I'm exhausted from the climb, you know, I need to like leave something for that descent or at least just elevate my fitness overall.
Yeah. So That's an interesting one. I mean, if you're generally always first in the group, but maybe partly because you're fitter, partly because you're just pushing harder.
I just want it. I'm competitive. I want to be the first.
Yeah. It's like, oh, I've got to be first up there. Well, yeah, it's a tricky one. I'd say certainly, it depends what you want out of the ride. Some rides you just want to smash yourself, don't you?
Mm-hmm.
Despite what I said earlier, you just want to go hard. You
Right.
want to get home feeling like I'm worked here,
Yeah.
because you've really worked hard. But I think for some rides, I'd suggest for you, Jeff, is that take those climbs that are a bit easier, climb with the group, maybe a little more chilled, and just leave a bit more in a tank for those descents, so you can, your body's less stressed going into it, so you can then really apply your skills in the best way, so you can think about what you're doing and be calm and relaxed when you drop in, rather than still kind of worked up and your body a bit sort of stressed from the effort.
Yeah.
In terms of, does a strong climber necessarily make a strong descender? There's obviously overlap in like your postural muscles and stuff like that, but we're assuming that you mean sort of seated climbing on the whole, like spinning up a logging road or something before the descent. Then I do, and this is oversimplifying a bit because everything overlaps, but I do kind of think about strength training in two parts to a certain extent. And one part is trying to create strength that in positions that kind of replicate your posture when you're stood on the bike, your whatever you call it, your ready position, your attack position, where we're in that fairly straight leg, heels dropped, hinged, over, chest or chin over the stem, arms bent, trying to be strong in those positions to create a strong position for descending. And then thinking a bit about other exercises we do at the gym that maybe favour a bit more like your quads and things like that, and just quite simply your ability to mash down on the pedals and help you punch out a load of watts to get up a mountain, basically. Now the two obviously overlap, and it's a big oversimplification, but I think that you can kind of divide it a bit like that if you want to.
Yeah. Yeah. And, enduro racing it's basically designed around this whole idea of like, you got to be strong enough to do the climbs so much that, and in good shape so that you're not just totally destroyed when it comes to the descents, and you're able to do that. And I love too how you talked about downhill racers. And, one of the, I guess, misconceptions I always had about downhill racers was that, these are all like big, like football player type, body types. When you see these guys with their pads off, and a lot of them are, they look like anybody else out on the trail. They aren't necessarily like, they don't have a lot of big muscles or like body mass. A lot of them are pretty like fit cyclists. You could almost be like, well, that guy could be in the Tour de France. I mean, these, a lot of it is more about that, just like overall level of fitness.
Yeah.
Is there a certain body type though that works better for cycling than others? Like is it possible to overtrain yourself and like, I don't know, build muscle mass that's like not appropriate for biking?
I think anything's possible. Yeah. And you don't see any great big like bodybuilders at the professional level, because and I remember it was probably pre-COVID, maybe that season. Do you remember Loic Bruni got really big, like real strong in the gym? And then I don't want to misquote it, but as I remember, he kind of then said, I felt really big and really strong and felt good, but just didn't feel quite as sort of light and agile on the bike. And then he sort of trimmed down a bit the next season, and he's still a strong boy, isn't he? But not quite as big as he was there. And so I think, going back to what you said about enduro, about that ability to ride all day and then punch out the stages, is the way I think about that is efficiency and power is what you're looking for in an enduro racer, which is also, if you think enduro is a bit like trail rider racing, really, isn't it? 'Cause that's why it's so popular, I think, for us all to have a go at. But, the best enduro racers are so aerobically fit that the transitions are incredibly efficient for them.
Hmm.
Their heart rate is low, they're relaxed, they're breathing comfortably through their nose or chatting, or, they're calm, they're relaxed, it's efficient, which means they've got as much energy as possible to really attack those stages. And that's where the power comes in. So you've got efficiency and power, and it's the power both in terms of on the pedals for those sprints, those repeated sprints, and maybe, like a horrible 20-30 second effort up a fire road if they're unlucky and they put that in, or also the power that the top riders need to put into the bike to generate speed, to pump turns and stuff, because the power those guys and girls put through, especially like a bermed or supportive corner, that comes from their body, from their strength, as and their timing and their skill, obviously. But so you really need efficiency and power to be a good enduro racer and arguably trail rider.
Yeah. Well, finally, I want to ask you, what's sort of like the number one misconception that mountain bikers have about strength and fitness training?
Ooh, that's a tricky one. I've done a few of these podcasts, Jeff. I don't think anyone's ever asked me that.
Well, you don't have to pick just one. Yeah. What are some things people come to you with and you're like, no, that's not right at all?
Yeah. I think that a couple, well, the first one is quite a lot of people, like I said earlier, they think they're not going to like the gym, and then they usually end up liking it. And then I guess the other one is sometimes people think that everything needs to be like super, like specific, like, the Q factor on my bike is this. So when I squat, I need to have my feet exactly this wide apart, and, or I need to put a 780 mil handlebar on the rower, or and all this stuff, and really make it really specific, when actually we just need to be better humans. And then trying to make things specific is like the icing on the cake.
Okay.
And then I guess the third thing I'd say, because I'm not really fully committed to one, is and again, it's because they've seen it on social media, especially with high profile pro athletes with Red Bull helmets and stuff doing this stuff, is a lot of people really buy into, and they think they can do loads of instability training, like unstable surfaces, where they're like balancing on a wobble cushion or a Bosu ball, or bloody standing on a Swiss ball and all this stuff. And honestly, Jeff, it drives me bananas, because I'm like, number one, the people putting this stuff up, the pro riders or whatever, and there's only a few of them that really do it. They put it up because it's interesting, but people think, oh, that's just what they do all the time. When actually that is like probably a tiny proportion of what they do. And all the rest of it is the mundane stuff, like just doing squats and lunges and pedaling your bike like everyone else does. But they put that up so everyone thinks, well, that's what I've got to do.
Yeah.
And the reality is, with that unstable surface training, is that I'm telling you now, 90% of the people who come and see me of all levels, including like elite riders and stuff who are amazing on bikes, and probably the people listening to this, is half of them can't even balance very well stood on one leg on the floor, Jeff.
Yeah, that's a challenge, right? Yeah, just stand on one leg, see how long you can go before you have to start hopping.
Just stand on one leg, solid, without correcting and wobbling around like a flamingo. Just stand there, solid. Most people can't do it. So the last thing they need is to be standing on a bloody wobble cushion, or let alone the risk factor of falling off of a Swiss ball that you're stood on. So that's right. I shouldn't have gone into this, because I'm ending the podcast with a rant, and everyone's going to think I'm a
my bad for making that your last question. But
they're all going to think I'm a sad, angry man getting angry at the internet, but I'm really not. I'm laughing about this. But instability training, honestly, if your physio tells you to do it because you've had an injury and it's going to help you rehab, do it. If anyone else tells you to do it, unfollow them, follow me instead, and we'll just do some proper work instead.
Yeah, that's great advice. Yeah, Ben, thanks so much for sharing your knowledge and experience with us. Yeah, strength training is obviously a really important thing for mountain bikers. And yeah, we appreciate your insight.
No worries, Jeff. Thanks so much for having me on. Just to let everyone know, I'm very much an open book. Like, there's no secrets. It's all just pretty straightforward stuff. And I'm really open to questions and feedback. So, if anyone's got any questions off the back of this, drop it on the social media or something. I get back to everybody, or fill in the email form on my website, and I will get back to you to help you out if you've got any questions about anything I did today.
Awesome. Thanks. Well, yeah, you can get more info and connect with Ben at thestrengthfactory.uk, and we'll have that link for you in the show notes. That's all I've got this week. We'll talk to you again next week.